All righty, I guess we can move on to NFL, gentlemen. We've been holding on to a massive trade that we haven't yet to discuss. Huge deal. I know all three of us are super excited to talk about this, given the relevance of it, and that would be Davante Adams. I was going to try to get Zach all hyped up, but the first one was definitely Davante Adams. I saw that news pretty soon after I got to New York, if not on the way over. I was absolutely blown away by that one. For Aaron Rodgers to re-sign and then Davante Adams to be traded out of Green Bay pretty soon after that, I'm really kind of blown away with that. And it seems like it comes down to Adams just not wanting to be there, and clearly the Raiders wanted him there, and clearly he wanted to be with the Raiders given the massive extension that he got at the wide receiver position. He's making, I think, $28 million a year over the next 7 years or something like that. It was a crazy big contract, but just wanted to get y'all's take on that. I'm actually just blown away by that one.
For me, it's pretty incredible because it's really strategic. It was a great strategic play by him and his agent, because the Packers had unloaded that massive deal to Rodgers, which had kind of crippled them from issuing out another deal. And so they franchise tagged Davante Adams, and he had already said, hey, I'm going to be steadfast and not playing for, despite the fact that for 1 year under a franchise tag, you get paid the top average of, I think, like the 5 individuals in your position, but he's the best in his position. So he was very steadfast in saying, I'm not going to play for the Packers this season. So, based off of, his successes the last 3 seasons or so, the Raiders took a gamble. They went out and got their guy, a guy that honestly Derek Carr has deserved to get because of his successes the last couple of years. And really excited to see what they're going to do in Raider Nation and Vegas, especially in a division that is that's just accumulating, amazing players. You saw Khalil Mack go to the Chargers, Russ Wilson go to the Broncos, lots of re-signings. You saw Mike Williams get his big deal. And then, oh, by the way, you have the Kansas City Chiefs, who just stacked up on Juju Smith. It got a couple other receivers as well. So if you want to compete in that division, you got to go out and get your guy and pay him a lot of money. Now, I will say this does pique my interest in that you saw the running back bubble kind of explode a couple of years ago, and now the running back position just frankly isn't very much prioritized, and you see that evidence through Zeke's contract. It kind of makes you wonder, is this going to happen with the wide receiver group? You saw Christian Kirk's deal, you saw Davante Adams' deal. These players are now getting paid $20+ million a year, and I just can't help but think the wide receiver market is going to hit a bubble sometime soon. But Av, I'll kick it over to you.
Yeah, no, that trade was absolutely shocking. I don't think any of us had heard any Davante Adams trade rumors to begin with once he got the tag, much less to the Raiders. But it's pretty interesting. And obviously the initial reaction is like, wait, what happened behind the scenes here? Did they just pull a fast one on Aaron? What's going on here? But I guess it looks like, obviously, like you mentioned, Davante has a relationship with Derek Carr, has a house or something in Vegas. Clearly Vegas was his preferred destination. And then they get the draft picks. So I guess the plan now is I expect them to draft 2 wide receivers with, in the first couple rounds, and rebuild the receiving core with Aaron, who they have locked up for the next 4 years. So in that sense, it makes some sense. But obviously Aaron would have had to not necessarily sign off on it, but I guess be aware of it, given that Davante had kind of asked out. So pretty interesting. But Zach, do you still think the Raiders should blow it up? They pretty much went the opposite direction. I
do not anymore.
I don't think either of us figured that Davante Adams was on the table when you made that take. And getting Chandler Jones as well, obviously that's a replacement for Ngakoue, who they traded, but hopefully is a better fit for their defense. So chaos out in the West, just pure and utter chaos. And
here's the thing. Here's my hot take. I still don't think the Raiders are going to compete for the division title after making that move, and even after signing Chandler Jones. First of all, thank you, Raiders, for trading us Ngakoue for next to nothing. Not next to nothing. Rock Ya-Sin's a great player, but next to nothing in the sense of us not having to give up any draft capital for a guy who's 27 and everywhere he's gone has been a terrific pass rusher. I just don't understand why teams keep trying to get rid of him. I guess it's scheme. I think was the point Ev made, but I feel so bad for that guy because he has been nothing but productive in his NFL career. I would argue one of the best pass rushers in the league, and he just keeps getting traded around. But I'm not complaining because the Colts have him, and hopefully it's a win-win for both teams. However, I still think when the cards are on the table, there's two teams in that division that are better than the Raiders, and I definitely think the Chiefs are still the best team in that division, even after all the moves have been made. The Chargers look like they took a huge step up, even if the Raiders made the playoffs last year, because they just made more moves. Between the Khalil Mack acquisition, keeping Mike Williams, extending their corner, I think they're just going to grow going forward. And I still think next to Patrick Mahomes, Justin Herbert's the next best player. And if Russell Wilson is like 90% of who he was 2 years ago, the Denver Broncos are also like a mean team in the sense of, and if we're being real here, if we're rating the quarterbacks in that division, and I mean this with no disrespect to Derek Carr, and Ev might disagree, I still think Carr comes fourth. So it's a tough one. It's a tough one for the Raiders, but I will say the fact that Carr and Adams played together at Fresno State is kind of it makes it too appealing not to take that when you can get the best receiver. But now they're giving $30 million essentially a year to their wide receiver. I don't know what Carr's contract's going to be when he gets his extension or whatever it is, but he's going to be making a ton of money. Darren Waller's going to deserve a lot of money when that comes around. So I don't really know how now they paid Chandler Jones a lot. So they're going to be an interesting cap position going forward. And I still think there needs to be a few more improvements made for that team to like really win. The flip side of that though is what on earth are the Packers going to do? Like, yeah, they can use their draft picks to get wide receivers, but if you're re-signing Aaron Rodgers and giving him over $150 million guaranteed, and he's going to be playing for $200 million over the next 4 years, I think your goal is to win a championship. Otherwise, why would you do it? And then the flip side to that is you can't just give them rookie receivers. And I'm just so frustrated with the Packers organization holistically because you're the reason Adams wanted to leave. You're the reason Aaron Rodgers had all this animosity over his career. You literally used a first-round draft pick on Jordan Love the year that you had Aaron Rodgers and Davante Adams ready to play football. And you did this to yourself. Like, the Packers deserve so much flack for the way they've handled their organization, the way they've ostracized their own players, and the way they haven't been able to put themselves in a position. And sure, some of the players deserve flack for not, showing up in the big moments in the playoffs and such. I'm not disputing that. However, I think if they were a little bit happier and you invested your draft resources a little bit better, then maybe they would have won. So I just wanted to say the Packers as a whole, I think they deserve a lot of flack for what's gone on over there. Even if they kept Rodgers, like, they're in an increasingly worse position to win not having Adams. And the thing is, it's not like there's any other free agent receivers left for them to pick up. So it's a really, really interesting position for them to be in.
There's a team that I feel like has actually done it worse than the Packers, and that's the Washington Commanders. And I wanted to get Ev's take on this because they have deliberately lied to Matt Ioannidis about re-signing him. And then he was obviously vocal about that. And he's been instrumental for that team. They shopped Tim Settle to the Bills. They almost lost McKissick until he miraculously re-signed. But overall, I mean, you saw Allen Robinson and Robert Woods both get shuttled away to new teams, and they could have been perfect veteran presence for a Washington team that needs, quite frankly, a possession receiver to open the field for Terry McLaurin. So, if you really want to give Carson Wentz targets and you want to be in this win now strategy, they had two phenomenal opportunities to get these receivers. You saw what Robert Woods went for. I mean, he's getting paid north of $10 million a year, but he went for like a 6th round pick. I mean, come on. Washington could have 100% forked over some cash. They're not crippled from a salary cap standpoint. They should have gotten that. They should have gotten their guy. They didn't, and here they are, kind of with mediocrity at the wide receiver level. They also could have shopped the Aaron Payne, and they failed to do so. So they kind of have this steadfast line with no depth. I think Washington really bit the bullet on this one, but curious to see your take, Ev.
Yeah, I'm going to shred each of your takes. All of those were just quite frankly dead wrong. So Matt Ioannidis was barely playable last year. Whether it was a scheme thing, maybe that's what a lot of people have said. He was barely playable last week, and he was a $7 million cap save. And in terms of the lying to your face, I mean, I was telling this aside, like, things change in the NFL very quickly. And when you acquire $28 million in cap space, that's going to change how you need to approach your roster. So they told him, right now, we have no plans to cut you. oh, and then we acquire a quarterback that takes up 20 million in cap. Okay, we need to do something about this. And then they cut him. Like, that's an eye roll for me on the agent's perspective. The McKissick thing, again, I think they had to clear cap to be able to make a contract offer. I think everyone was a little upset about that one. But I think the fact that he chose to stay with the Commanders over a, like, maybe the Super Bowl favorite, like, you know, I think that says something about the team culture. The team culture, not the organization culture. I'll give you that. Deron Payne, like, why trade him? I mean, he's an absolute stud. If you're not going to get value for him, it just kind of is unnecessary to me. And the receivers. So Robert Woods is coming off a torn ACL that happened late in the year. So you're going to get him for what, the last half of the season, if that. And he's on an expiring deal, if I'm not mistaken. So Washington isn't going to win next year anyway. So why am I going to take on Robert Woods for half the season on an expiring contract? That just doesn't make sense. And then Allen Robinson was awful last year. And I mean, his contract wasn't bad, but like, I'm just not a guy I'm particularly interested in. I'd rather go the draft route.
The Wentz deal looks worse now after what happened with Matt Ryan, who we've been waiting to talk about. Obviously, I think I was kind of trying to save the most relevant and the best for last. After, this is so funny, we have a quarterback carousel going on amongst the three of us. After Ev, who was like roasting the Colts for Wentz for a couple weeks there, finally had to deal with Wentz going over, even though I initially didn't even want to trade Wentz. So it's like a really funny dichotomy because I'm sitting here defending Wentz and Ev's over there like, no, Wentz isn't worth it. Then Wentz gets traded to Ev's team. I'm like, well, I guess Wentz is gone, but then I'm pretty happy with the deal because we get good assets out of it. Well, we get 2 picks and some cap space back as a result of trading Wentz, and then we move up with one of our picks too as a result of it, and we trade a pick over to the Skins, and then we trade one of those picks, a 3rd round pick, to Zach's team to get Matt Ryan back, who is now cheaper than Carson Wentz because the Falcons are absorbing $40 million of his deal, so we're paying him 24 next year and 28 the year after because the restructure never happened that Zach was concerned was going to happen. So now the Colts have Matt Ryan. I never thought that was a possibility because last year it didn't seem like it was a possibility at all given his contract. And in this year, I wasn't positive that they were even going to deal Matt Ryan because of their affinity for their quarterback who's been with them through thick and thin and just been a leader for them for so long. So I never thought that was a possibility. But then when it fell on the radar that might be a possibility, I literally was like, this is perfect. Like, this is the guy that I want more than Garoppolo, more than Baker, more than any of the free agents, more than anyone available outside of Rodgers and Wilson, who clearly weren't on the table. Matt Ryan is the guy that I wanted, and I'm so happy it happened. I'll let you guys talk about it and circle back after you guys give me your thoughts, but just absorbing it the last couple of days, I am ecstatic we got Matt Ryan.
Well, it goes to show the patience of Chris Ballard. I know you've mentioned, how much you've enjoyed his kind of like lean financial decision making as he kind of, uses the drawing board to strategically go after certain players without giving up a lot of draft picks and shelling out or agreeing to pay a ton of cap space. This is where, from me as a neutral standpoint, I see what Chris Ballard is doing, and so doing better than pretty much any other GM in the game, because he was able to construct a deal where Washington has absorbed the majority of Carson Wentz contract.
All of it.
And yep, exactly. And in doing so, kind of taking advantage of the moment where Matt Ryan, is a victim of, multiple restructured deals. And now the Falcons find themselves with the most expensive dead cap of any NFL player in history. So what a great strategic move for the Colts to kind of sneak in. I know it wasn't perfect last year. It probably would have been better to get Matt Ryan over there a year earlier, but he still has some gas in the tank. He's going to be 36 years old. There have been clear, there's been a clear deterioration in his arm, but he's still one of the best play action guys in the game. And he's going to be revolutionary for that offense. Now, there are also talks of the Colts potentially going after Julio Jones, who really has no market right now because he was overpaid substantially in Tennessee, started to deal with the injuries that long plagued them in Atlanta. And he's actually getting solicited by, Your linebacker, his name is escaping me, but one of the best
Jared
linebackers.
Sanders.
Yep, exactly. Him and a lot of your other players as well to kind of like come back and play in not the Georgia Dome or the Mercedes-Benz Dome now, but let's go ahead and run this thing back in Lucas Oil Stadium. That would be really interesting for the Colts. But I think overall, my take is Matt Ryan will, kind of forever be my favorite player I've ever watched. Reason I'm a big Falcons fan too. And, nothing but the best for him. I think it's great for both parties in terms of Matt Ryan to go out late in his career. He's got now the infrastructure to potentially make a Super Bowl run. And I think it also allows the Falcons to finally rebuild, because let's be honest, we really had no idea what we were doing. We were just kicking the can down the road. And I know the trade was pretty awful. I mean, we only got a 3rd round pick and a bag of chips out of it. And
I don't think you even got a bag of chips. Didn't you just get a 3rd round pick? No chips.
Somebody
yeah, we can afford it because we paid $40 million of his contract this year. But overall, I think that puts our sales out right. And we have a new GM. So, the GM was not tied to Matt Ryan in any way, shape, or form. And so hats off to Chris Ballard for taking advantage of the moment, not over investing in prior years, and getting their guy when it mattered most.
I will say one thing, and I want to let Ev give his take, but one of the funniest comments that I saw is I think the Falcons got more back from Mohamed Sanu than they did for Matt Ryan, which was like one of the funniest things that I saw when I saw that initially, because I think you guys got like 2 picks for Mohamed Sanu or something like that. So
we got a 2nd rounder for him. Yeah.
Yeah. That's so mind-boggling to me. Go ahead.
Yeah, I mean, I'm going to take a slightly, not necessarily contrarian. I mean, definitely a good deal. Obviously, you basically gave up nothing when you think about before the Wentz trade. Obviously, it was just one of those picks that you gave up. I think he was the guy to get. I was surprised, like you said, Sai, that, you thought it wasn't really a possibility. I was surprised that was the case because it just seemed to make so much sense. Given that I think it was obvious that the Falcons and Matt Ryan, it was time to move on from each other, given that the Falcons need to go to more of a rebuilding mode and that, the Colts could use a guy like that. Yeah, it's a good contract. You can cut him after this year if it doesn't work for no dead cap. But I mean, I don't know. It seems like everyone has forgotten that Matt Ryan looks washed. And obviously the Atlanta situation was awful, like bad line, no running game, no receivers, but like no arm strength, no mobility. Like, I don't know. I mean, of the quarterbacks that were available, like you look at numbers last year, he was the worst of the bunch. I would argue Jimmy G is the best of the bunch. Now, granted, he probably would have cost more, and the shoulder surgery is a bit of a situation, but like, I mean, I think it's a good deal. I think it was the right guy to go get. Didn't give up basically anything for him. Contract's not bad. So overall good, but it's just kind of like, okay, you guys have a quarterback now, great. And it reminds me kind of the Phillip Rivers situation.
So that's the point that I was going to make. So first and foremost, Jimmy G also had a solid offensive line, a great run game, and Deebo Samuel and George Kittle to throw the ball to every week. So obviously his numbers are going to be better. And a game manager position with Kyle Shanahan as his head coach, which, by the way, was the offensive coordinator of Matt Ryan when he won his MVP. So clearly the odds are stacked against Matt Ryan compared to Jimmy G. And yes, Jimmy G is younger and probably has the bigger arm. I also think some people are overblowing how much Matt Ryan's arm has gone, because if you really want to put it that way, the Colts made the playoffs and almost beat the Bills 2 years ago with Phillip Rivers as our quarterback. And I promise you, I watched every game Phillip Rivers played, including the playoffs that year. There is no way Matt Ryan is even close to as bad in the sense of having lost arm strength and having lost mobility to the level of Phillip Rivers. That dude could not take a step to the right in the pocket, and that dude could not throw the ball more than 5 yards down the field without having to put his entire body into it. Yes, Matt Ryan's arm is deteriorated, but he is literally the anti-Carson Wentz. Like, he does the absolute opposite of Carson Wentz. He does not have the ceiling to be able to make those big throws that maybe he did earlier in his career, but he can still complete passes within that 20 to 30-yard window with consistency, and he can move the ball down the field. He can use play action with Jonathan Taylor. And in his entire career of playing with the Falcons, he has never been in a position where he's had a terrific offensive line and one of the best running backs in the NFL running the ball, where he doesn't have to throw for like 5,000 yards and like 30 touchdowns for that team to be relevant. He has never had that. And he's also never had more than a barely above average defense. And the only year he did, they went to the Super Bowl. So in every way, Matt Ryan is in a better position. The only thing I will argue is he had a better receiving situation in Atlanta for most of his career than he's currently walking into. However, we're not going to expect him again to make crazy throws, and I do think we'll sign somewhere else. I think he was the perfect guy for us because we didn't have to give up a lot for him either. And even if we got Jimmy, his contract was up at the end of the year. So we would have had to pay more for a rental and then have to pay him money to re-sign. And I didn't want Jimmy G as my long-term quarterback. So I'd rather take Ryan and plan for the future through the draft or through other avenues. So I have no complaints about that.
The challenge I'll make to you is that the Colts, again, I've said this on the last 2 podcasts, but the Colts, you said great offensive line. They were bottom 10 in pass blocking offensive line last year, and they currently don't have a left tackle, which will change with the cap space. But and there's no receiver other than Pittman. There's no receivers there, so they got a lot to fix still, which I anticipate they will. But I don't know. And like, do you really want Matt Ryan next year as well? Like, I don't know. I would hope that you would maybe have some ideas on a long-term solution. But
I think I would for now. I mean, unless we find somebody in the draft this year in the second round that comes through. But I will say this though, like I think part of the reason our offensive line got so much flack for pass blocking is because we were a run first offense and we had Carson Wentz as our quarterback, bro. Like that dude holds the ball longer than anybody else.
So does Matt Ryan. Matt Ryan is notorious for holding the ball.
He is notorious for holding the ball because before he had no run game. Like this is the point that I'm trying to make. Like he can get off play action much quicker and get rid of the ball. He's a veteran, dude. He knows how to adjust. Like Frank Reich took Philip Rivers a year after Philip Rivers did nothing but throw interceptions for the Chargers and won 11 games with them and went to the playoffs. He took Carson Wentz, who was absolutely terrible, and made him halfway decent, even if we didn't make the playoffs when he didn't have an offseason of practice. Since Kyle Shanahan, this is the best situation Ryan's walking into in terms of head coaching as well. So I'm happy about that. And one last rebuttal I want to make is off air. We had a little conversation on GroupMe, and I'll get Zach's comments on this, but Ev was mentioning how, obviously I'm high on Chris Ballard, and I think a lot of people in the industry are high on Chris Ballard and Frank Reich. But Ev was saying, they deserve criticism, like they get too much credit for, and I'll let him word it however he wants to, but basically for not having been very competitive or I don't even know what the wording was, but basically over the last 4 to 5 years, having not won a playoff game. And it gave me a little time to kind of digest. And I thought to myself, like, I don't even understand how, as Colts fans, we can be ungrateful for those two guys, because Andrew Luck retires 1 week before a season starts. We have won more games than we have lost every single season, except for the year after he loses. In that time frame, Chris Ballard drafts Jonathan Taylor, Darius Leonard, Quentin Nelson, Braden Smith, Michael Pittman, and more. 4 of those guys are all pro players. He completely reconstructs our roster. He puts us in a position to win. And the hardest position to address is the one of the quarterback. And obviously, you're not just going to, when your team is winning, you're not going to have a top 10 pick to be able to draft a quarterback. And then you have to take a shot, which we did with Wentz. It didn't work. And clearly we learned our lesson, moved on from him immediately. You guys took on his contract, gave us multiple picks. We used one of those picks to get Matt Ryan back. So basically we got a better quarterback for our situation, who is making less money, who's a veteran, and now have an additional pick as a result of that. So we corrected our mistake from prior. And then going forward, we're in a much better position to win football. And we still have more cap space than the majority of the league, even after taking on Matt Ryan's contract. I don't understand how people can be ungrateful, because, yeah, we haven't won playoff games, so to speak, but we've also been in a position where we've built a team that has sustained success and the ability to win going forward. And I'm so tired of Colts fans complaining that we're not spending money in free agency, because I'm so tired of people wanting us to be a team of the past where we'd spend like $40 million on some guy that's like 40, and then he'd come and do nothing for us, and then we'd be stuck in a terrible cap situation and not prioritize the things that we need. We are so lucky, and we should be so grateful for the guys that we have. That's my take.
I will say I agree with you, Cy, but I would say playing devil's advocate, it's got to be frustrating to be a Colts fan and go through 6 quarterbacks in 6 years. I mean, even dating back to Tolzien after Luck. So, the good thing is the Colts have set themselves, they've kind of built the infrastructure for them to be in win now mode. And so why not bring in a veteran? And I think Matt Ryan personally, that's just the best with your offense and your offensive scheme, as well as the personnel. I mean, Matt Ryan, was at his best when he had Michael Turner and Devonta Freeman in their prime. Jonathan Taylor's better than both of them, which is just crazy to say considering both of them were our Ring of Honor guys for sure. And on top of that, I mean, the line is, I think Ev is kind of bashing the offensive line a lot. There were injuries last year. And also, Carson Wentz is infamous for holding the ball way longer than any other quarterback. Matt Ryan brings a veteran presence. He's great off the play action. He's great off of mid throws. I mean, a lot of the times Carson Wentz is looking for that deep ball throw, that 60-yard pass that's going to magically bring the Colts back into a game or alleviate them out of whatever jam they're in. Matt Ryan's not that guy. He's going to get you, he's going to put the ball right on the money, right in between the shoulder pads, 20 to 30 yards out. And I think he's really going to set your offense up to do some successful things. Plus, it's going to be interesting to see if you guys bring Hilton back, because TY, with that offense could be very interesting.
Matt Ryan got the ball out faster than anybody in the NFL last year, by the way, if you want to go look up the statistic. But go ahead, E.
Just to back up on the offensive line, the stats I'm referencing are win rates, which has nothing to do with the quarterback holding on to the ball. It's completely just offensive linemen winning their matchups. And back to my point about the Colts more broadly, I actually never criticized Ballard. I think Ballard's done a tremendous job building that team. I did say he shouldn't be getting praised for this Ryan move when it's his mess that got him into this situation by giving up a first and a third for Wentz, which wasted a season. Although I think him and Reich wanted to keep him. But my whole point is all right, especially to Frank Reich, and it's prove it. You've been talking for 5 years about how Ballard's built this amazing organization, which I don't disagree with. He's done a tremendous job. So if the excuses are going to run out, the luck excuse I'm done with, because it was 5 years ago. Someone's going to have to be blamed if you don't start winning now, is my point. Someone's going to have to be blamed. So
Sure. I won't dispute that. I think hopefully Ryan can.
And just to make sure we're on the same page, Ev, you agree with Sinai's assessment that Indianapolis is the clear favorite in the AFC South next season, or do you still think Tennessee is the edge? I think Indianapolis 100% is.
That is a wild take.
Why? I think that player is going to make a totality difference.
Do you realize how big the gap was between those two teams last season, and Derrick Henry is out for the whole year?
I think the Tennessee Titans have a clear defensive issue.
Mike
Vrabel's a defensive-minded guy, but list their person.
Did you watch football last year, Zach?
Indianapolis outplayed a lot of their competition. They just had a couple of bad losses here and there.
The Titans had
a veteran QB and presence. I think they're going to be just fine.
The Titans had a top 5 defense last year.
No. Let me clarify something. I don't think we're a clear favorite, but to say that some people think we're a favorite, I don't think it's some crazy anomaly.
I mean, 1 seed to a team that didn't make the playoffs is a pretty big gap in my book.
I won't dispute it when you frame it in the sense of win
wins and losses.
But as of last year, given the circumstances of the teams, I won't dispute that. But I will also say, when you look at personnel going into this year and the situation we're in versus the situation we were in last year, having a veteran and having been more established and coming in with a guy that's actually going to be at OTAs and practicing in the offseason, I think you're going to see a big difference. Also, I think Ryan Tannehill has proven that his contract is not worth it. He's extremely overrated, and that he's not going to win a Super Bowl with the Titans. No disrespect to the organization, but let's not pretend like that's not the case. I know we went on a big rant about the Colts, Commanders, Falcons situation, but with that carousel, I think it was about time that we had another little one of those. But what a conversation, guys! This free agency, this has been. I think I said it last week, and I'll say it again. This has been one of the most epic, if not the most epic, free agencies I've ever seen in my lifespan. Because usually NFL free agency isn't to this level of craziness the way some others are. And oh boy, it's this one blew everything else out the water with the movement. It's crazy, guys. I'm super excited for next season. All these teams are going to look a whole lot different, and it's going to make for a really exciting situation. So that's all I got.
We'll go ahead and close this one out. First of all, thank you guys for liking and subscribing and commenting on our videos. We really appreciate it. And we've noticed an uptick over the last couple of weeks. So really appreciate your support, whether it's Spotify or YouTube. If you want to get on and get on, have these quarterback carousel debates or really anything that we discuss, give us a shout. We'll get you on the podcast, and we'd be more than happy to have you. Before I close out and let these guys maybe sign us off, wanted to just kind of bring up one bad beat that I saw in the MMA community. Really bad look, actually. Jorge Masvidal trying to seeking out Colby Covington in a Miami restaurant and trying to fight him on site after he got waxed for 5 straight rounds in the octagon. So apparently, you know, it's still not settled, which makes sense because they certainly have strong personalities. But for him to get completely dominated in the octagon and then find out through social media via the Nelk boys that Colby Covington was eating dinner in a restaurant in Miami, and then he brings his crew and tries to fight him. Thank God that didn't happen, but it did come at the expense of who I believe is an innocent person who got his teeth punched out. So at this point in time, Jorge Masvidal is wanted for a felony in battery. So stay tuned. Don't fight your friends. Don't fight random people on the streets. If you can do that, you'll be just fine this week. Outside of that bad beat, sign us off, guys.